culture in presenting lectures. Just sit it down and present it. So, this is the logo of my university up here. To speculate that after the epidemics, citizens, people, lived without diseases. So I think that Hippocrates was the first immunologist in Earth. And of course, many years afterwards, a man that I admire highly, Metchnikoff, who inspired my young ages in immunology, also discussed on equilibrium of the homeostasis, and he analyzed what he meant when he was talking in The Man of Nature that only science is capable of resolving the task of human existence. We won't forget that Metchnikoff, who was a close friend to Tolstoy, was a man that first described the phagocyte and gave it the Greek name, phagocyte, and he was the first man in cellular immunology who took the Nobel Prize in Physiology. And to honor my friend Alexander Poletaev, when he spoke in Greece on natural antibodies, I devoted the cover of the Anousia journal we published in the Hellenic Society of Immunology. I put this picture. You see, Metchnikoff was supported highly by Tolstoy, who was already at that time a very famous writer. And it was his means to address to the public. And let's go back to the physiological role of the immune system. What is the main role of the immune system? What was always the main role? To sense the environment, and mainly protect from pathogens, and of course, and beyond. And not only to sense the environment, but to keep the homeostasis. And this is another major and very significant role. The first questions were posed by those groups working by Bournet, the first Nobel Prize in understanding the environment. Afterwards, it was completed by Janeway, and more completed by Matzinger. Janeway and Matzinger put in the center of the immune response and immune homeostasis the natural immunity, of course. And that's how things begin. And in a very nice issue of Science, those scientists posed the debate. Non-self-recognition, or the danger model behind the immune response. But let's say that these models are still open for discussion. But anyway, we know now that the innate immune system, mainly by dendritic cells and monocytes, phagocytes, make the beginning, and that later on, through PAM-PRR recognition and interaction, they can present this knowledge to T cells. And T cells have the task to adapt immunity to its time to the invader, and either to foreign or to self-antigens, and this is a task that is considered continuously working, and sometimes when dearranged, leading to autoimmunity. This is a picture from our book in the university concerning clinical immunology. Okay? when we see how the whole immune response is regulated, it was obvious many years now, 30 years and more now, that there was some power controlling all this multi-level and complicated interaction. And it became reality when the scientific community started discussing on immune homeostasis through T-regs. And now we very well know how T-regs that emerged in the screen somehow 30 years ago do control all these interactions. And what does immune regulation do? It stimulates specific T-cell mediated regulatory mechanisms in order to eliminate any invader, either external or internal, and to conserve mainly homeostasis of the organism. And there came T-regulatory cells, and we now know that the T-regulatory cells come either from the central tolerance in the thymus, they are derived after positive selection and get out to the periphery, and it seems that it is the main group of T-regulatory cells. And of course, there are also peripheral T-regulatory cells that they were formed after secondary influence of environmental cytokines. And this is a constant process that also serves to maintain homeostasis. And how does the whole thing begin? First, Gerson described some suppressor cell activity coming from thymus, but it took almost 30 years because there were no receptor identification assays so that someone could isolate or just see how they were, until Sakaguchi first at least found that CD25 high, that is the receptor for IL-2 and especially the alpha chain, is a very important characteristic of T-regulatory cells. And there was the pioneering work of Hori afterwards, when he first found the major regulator, the transcription factor FOXP3, that really had to do, it was the lineage regulator of the regulatory cells. Now we know that the cells derive from thymus, a great part of them, and they are CD4 positive, CD25 high positive, and FOXP3 positive, that work a little bit differently than the other subset that comes out of thymus in their negative production through CD8 positive, CD4 positive, but CD25 and FOXP3 negative cells. And after the influence of antigen and other environmental cytokine stimuli, they form the inducible T-regulatory cells. A main discrimination between those subsets is the fact that natural T-regulatory cells work through cell-to-cell contact, and they usually need the presence of dendritic cells. Though we can keep it in mind for discussion, and the other group of inducible regulatory T cells, they need antigenic stimuli and cytokines, especially TGF-beta or IL-10, so that to exert their effect on T conventional cells by lowering down NHCM co-stimulatory molecules, lowering down dendritic cell and other antigen-presenting cell function, and of course turn off inflammatory cytokines. That's how things happen, how the one group comes out of thymus ready for action. Then the other group needs the effect of antigen. They become either FOXP3 positive or not, either 25 positive or not, and they intercept the infection in the periphery. And another option where we can see that the one group comes out after positive selection, so the other groups runs out in the periphery after the apoptotic death and the negative selection, and they are formed in the periphery to those three groups on which we will discuss a little bit later. So T-regs sense the environment in multiple ways with all those receptors and many others. And it can also affect the environment. Every immunocompetent cell in the environment can be affected by T-regulatory cells. Today we will discuss on T cells mainly affected by regulatory T cells. And T cells are influenced continuously by the environment. It is a very dynamic feedback function by IL-2 that is considered to be very critical in their functions, though some is debated. By IL-15, which is the other cytokines working on IL-2 receptor, the other chain, and of course by vitamins and many other substances in the periphery that continuously form and reform the environment while T-regulatory cells adjust every minute their function. So the main phenotypes, if we want to describe them like that, phenotypically, it is a more descriptive way, though things don't happen so separately every time. We can describe them as naturally occurring T-regs. These are the CD4 positive, 25 high positive, and FOXP3 positive that usually work by cell-to-cell contact, and a main substance for this cell-to-cell contact effect is the CTLA-4 molecule, as we will see later. The TR1, T-regulatory lung cells, that as we can see they are another lineage of CD4 positive cells, mainly secreting IL-10, and another group that is the T helper 3 that mainly secretes TGF-beta and has a high receptor affinity for TGF-beta. Of course, there are CD8 positive regulatory cells that always work with cell-to-cell contact and through CTLA-4 and usually IL-10. This is a picture of how things work. This is a regulatory cell and a conventional T cell. And let's see first which are the identical signs on natural Treg surface. First of all, they are a small proportion of peripheral cells, 1 to 2% of CD4 positive cells. Always those cells and substances that do the much job, the great job, exist in small quantities and percentages in the periphery. They are thymus-derived, FOXP3 positive, and have different other surface markers through which they perform their action. All those markers help in the expression of suppressor activity in the periphery and in the lymph nodes and in the affected by inflammation organs. They can localize whenever and wherever it is needed to suppress inflammation. To non-lymphoid and lymphoid organs, to Th17 mediated inflammation that has earned much interest in the last years, to Th1 mediated inflammation, and also to Th2 mediated inflammation in allergic diseases, not so much in autoimmunity, always expressing specific chemokine receptors that help them to move appropriately where needed. And let's have a closer look to the other subgroup of inducible peripheral T-regulatory cells. They also derive from naive CD4 cells. They are antigen specific. What does it mean? It means that initially they need antigenic challenge and cytokine presence to express their suppressive activity, but after they have been stimulated, they can express their function non-specifically by bystander suppression. This is a very important advantage of these T cells, and it's something that can be used clinically to induce suppressive activity in preventing or treating autoimmune and not only diseases. They may or they may not express CD25 and FOXP3, but they for sure secrete IL-10 in larger amounts and TGF-beta in smaller amounts. And they can suppress Th1 and Th2 responses. They are the regulatory T cells that they act on mucosal surfaces. They are implied nowadays in gut autoimmunity, in IBM, in inflammatory bowel diseases. Their work has been experimentally proven in mice with colitis. And nowadays they are also implied in skin autoimmunity. So they usually run to surfaces. So this is the action of IL-10 that T-regulatory cells promote, and we are mainly interested on their suppressive activity on dendritic cells and peripheral conventional T cells, where they lower down pro-inflammatory cytokine profiles, lower down primary and secondary signals of the immune response, and they have a close relation to dendritic cells. It makes tolerogenic dendritic cells and vice versa. Concerning the other subset of peripherally induced T-regulatory cells, they are also coming out of the lineage of CD4 positive cells in the periphery, and they are mainly secreting TGF-beta and of course the other suppressive cytokines. They decrease the expression of CD80-86, that's the secondary signal of the immune response. There seems that this function has to do with the internalization of the CD80, CD86 molecules. They act on NK cells and suppress the production of IgE and make an isotype switch, and this is something that has been implied in recent efforts to treat allergic diseases, and especially after desensitization procedures. Here are some actions of the TGF-beta cytokine they produce, and what are finally the main mechanisms of action by Tregs. If we want to make just a slight picture of all these mechanisms of action, again, I would say for descriptive reasons, it's not that it is always reality like that. Those mechanisms may act in combination, may change during a procedure, may switch off and switch on different pathways. So again, this is for a descriptive purpose. So mainly naturally occurring Tregs act by cell-to-cell contact through CTLA4, CD80-86, or through another suppression molecule they have LAC3 that communicates with MHC2 and switches off presentation. They do release cytokines that affect the environment, mainly TGF-beta, IL-10, and the newly described IL-35. We don't know how it is really a major work that this cytokine does, or if it supplementates the function of IL-10 or TGF-beta. They do cytolysis. It was a very always need picture in immunology. These are the effects we described before through inhibitory cytokines, cytolysis, metabolic disruption, and cell-to-cell contact. What we again notice in these very nice descriptive pictures from Nature Reviews, that the presence of the dendritic cell is almost exclusively needed. And as we say, Tregs communicate very closely with dendritic cells, and what do? 3-CTLA4 energy induction. It signals IDO, which is an enzyme that degrades tryptophan and leads to starvation of T effector cells and apoptosis. T-regulatory cells have found their clinical equivalent in many autoimmune diseases. First of all, diabetes mellitus, that has been so much discussed in this meeting, multiple sclerosis, autoimmune thrombocytopenic purpura, Adamantiatis disease, which is a vasculitis of usually medium and small vessel. In rheumatoid arthritis, of course, and in systemic lupus erythematosus, and not only. And I will show you a few pictures from my lab and my PhD student, Kostas Tselios, who is not with us here, but I had to comment on him because he and Alex, who is with me here, have done much work on Treg in lupus, in systemic lupus, concerning their behavior, their presence, let's say, not behavior. They were not functional assays. We were just measured their percentage and their changes during lupus activity at different time points in a great group of patients. For 3 years now, we followed up something like 200 lupus patients and did more than 300 measurements where it was clearly shown that Tregs change according to disease activity, and disease activity here is given through the SLEDAI index below 5 and over 5, and you see that there is a very good correlation to that. And in this scatter diagram, it's much easier seen that they have an inverse relation. Tregs increase when this is under any treatment. We did not see which exact treatment did the job. So they increase when disease is in good, patients are in good condition and have a SLEDAI below 5. And that when disease relapses, Tregs decrease. And here is another nice picture of a certain moment during disease activity, and you see very well this inverse correlation. So, T-regulatory cell is the only suppressor lineage that comes out of native CD4 positive cells. The other 3 lineages are all inductive and inducing cellular immunity. CD4 cells can adapt different function phase and elaborate different mechanisms depending mainly on the cytokine milieu. And this differential specification comes from their main transcription factors, for example, TBET for TH1, GATA3 for TH2, etc., and ROR gamma T for CD17. And we know that nowadays that Tregs can use and turn on different transcription factors of the lineages of the T effector cell subtypes in order to polarize properly within tissue and induce homeostasis where inflammation exists. And we can say nowadays that there is a two-module expression in the core of a Treg, that is the core module that has to do with, let's say, the physical activities of Tregs, that is the increase of CD11-4, CD25, and consumption of IL-2, and there is a TX-like module, sorry, where T-regulatory cells, according to the needs of the environment, to own homing receptors and express, besides FOXP3, regulatory major genes according to what is needed in the periphery, within the lesions, or within the lymph nodes. And that gives them an extreme plasticity to come and go within the sites of inflammation. It has been shown that Treg deficiency expresses different patterns of behavior lead to autoimmune disease or other chronic inflammatory diseases. This is a picture when one can see how plastically they behave, how they can establish and turn on ROR gamma, just throwing a little down the expression of FOXP3, or equivalently how they can turn on Tibet or GATA3 in order to supply the needed effort. But it has also been shown recently that they have also another very close friend, and that is the Th17. Two are the major friends of Tregs, dendritic cells and Th17. And they can turn on and off with great plasticity from one part to the other by switching on and off different description pathways. So FOXP3, one could say, that works as a rheostat, controlling this diverse function of Treg cells. Treg cells can be used nowadays, at least it has been tried, and the whole research has begun to treat autoimmunity, to have better results in solid transplantation and against cancer and allergic diseases. And what are the main clinical implications at the moment in re-establishing the control over autoreactivity? These are a few papers published mainly 2 to 3 years ago in preventing autoimmune diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis, not any rheumatoid arthritis status, but at least early rheumatoid arthritis. Tregs are used now to induce tolerance in transplantation. There are a few reports here. They have a potential in bone marrow transplantation and in end-stage kidney disease, of course in atherosclerosis as well. They are tried, but it's a great discussion there. It's an organ-specific disease. Of course, to adapt transfer immunotherapy and to treat allergic diseases with adaptive function. That means that they are collected, they are ex vivo manipulated, and they are re-established back in the patient, and that is the adaptive immunotherapy. It was already known 10 years ago. So, back to our conclusions and within proper time. Tregs and immunosuppressive cytokines are key players for homeostasis. Active suppression involves many aspects of their function. That means receptors, cytokines, and many other surface molecules. these mechanisms are implied in autoimmunity and not only. Knowledge of the molecular basis is very important in understanding the regulation of the immune system and the induction of energy in keeping a continuous homeostatic status in health, and of course the deregulation should be also studied and see why it is harmful in immune-mediated diseases and especially in autoimmunity. Next 10 years will solve these questions, I suppose. Recent advances in the knowledge of peripheral tolerance may lead to real future therapeutic application of Tregs and safer treatment for autoimmune disease and other immune-mediated diseases. You see, I cannot bring you striking words like vitamin D in preventing autoimmune disease or olazartan in the treatment of atherosclerosis, but at least I can bring you the options that arise from the manipulation of regulatory T cells that probably is going to open a new therapeutic field in the future. And this is the hospital where I'm honored to direct the second department of our university. This is a complex of many new and old buildings. This in the center is where I stand with the clinical immunology laboratory and the outpatient clinic. But if you want to find me, I think that this is the easiest way of all.
Well,
so
sorry
thank you
for
very
my
much.
interruption, but we can lose the Kremlin too.
I think that I'm very good in time, much better than I would expect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for a brilliant report. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. Only in private way, please, if you somebody have